Okay, hello, greetings and welcome. Now, there's a vibrational scale of understanding of things, and this vibrational scale has insight or understanding into physical. So we might call that knowledge. A person has an intellectual mind, and as they release time, it moves from an intellectual property into a deeper understanding, a deeper knowledge of that topic. Now I'm just pulling these labels out and overlaying them in different cultures and different religious systems. These labels have very unique meanings, but make your own vibrational scale. Now, once something's in this deeper knowledge state, some people might call this wisdom, where you really feel an understanding for something. You feel something when you slow it down. When the mind's vibrating in a type of staticky state, it's too fast, a more stress state, it's thinking. When you release time, you feel. There's an intuitive knowing. So we work from this intellectual state into a knowledge-knowing state. And then when you connect it back to action and you start applying it, it becomes a type of wisdom. Now, inside the application, it requires mindfulness, being in the present moment, and requires a deep concentration on what you're doing. Now, there's deep concentration on what you're doing and applying that knowledge into a skill to produce a type of wisdom where you have direct experience with it. There's a one-pointedness of concentration, but there's also a release of space. When you go into the zone, when you're doing something, the mind occupies much more space. So if you've ever been out on the ocean, and I used to do kayaking, paddling with the kayak, and you put your mind in the distance and you sort of lose the edges of space around you. You get into the zone. If you've been a runner and you're focusing on your running and you look out in the distance, you sort of get into this spaceless zone, this timeless space where you're running at your peak. And athletes from all different areas will enter into the zone, and depending on how they're performing or what type of sport it is, what their time and space relationship will be between the mind and their environment. But this activity converts energy, knowledge into wisdom, and makes you wise, makes you understand how to run, how to swim, how to do kayaking, how to do a sport, how to work with spiritual knowledge, how to make spiritual knowledge functional. So our first stage is taking an intellectual process, practicing it, everything slows down. The first stage of stillness, we enter the astral. Then in the second stage, we enter the mental, where we're releasing space. Now, the next stage after that is where we enter into equanimity, where we move the mind like a feather, and to navigate towards an objective, as we enter into equanimity and the mind rises towards that vibrational state. It might be a ray energy, it might be a teaching, a dharma, it might be a non-dual light state, but you need to go into the equanimity and move through the equanimity, moving the mind like a feather to that state. And when you're in that state, you get a type of insight in relation to it. So your first learning or understanding level is intellectual inside of time and space. You slow things down, you get deep feeling, you release time. You release space, you get a relationship to time and space inside of an activity to be in the zone, as a lot of athletes call it, or a musician who's just in that place, there it is. Now, you can't be too released of time because you need to be physically connected in the present moment. But you need to have transitioned through a deep feeling of releasing time in your relationship to it, and you express it in the present moment and releasing space. If your mind is too sticky and small, you can't be in the zone. You need a big space to be in the zone. And then from there, you release time and space together. And this is where you do Akasha work or Wuji work. And when you're releasing time and space together, collapsing your mind inwards, you reach this particle level and your mind follows the particles into Akasha, into emptiness. You go to the other side of form, which is underlying emptiness. And that's what generates deep equanimity. And there's lots of methods for going into this equanimity. When you're in that equanimity, this releases what we call insight. Insight is to know things from the perspective of Dharma, from the perspective of universal laws, from the perspective of the lawfulness of emptiness. This generates insight. So whatever labels we put on these, it's important to know the conditions upon which these types of intelligence arise. The intelligence of inside of time and space of a person with high IQ, the intelligence of releasing time to enter the astral and having an intuitive knowing about things, feeling them out really well, being in the present moment but releasing space to be in the zone, acting upon something and getting a type of wisdom of practical experience, then entering the Akasha and getting direct insight from a universal, lawful perspective. Now, as a vibrational scale, physical, astral, mental, Akasha, in that vibrational scale, we have personal truth in the intellect. And then as we move through the personal truth of the intellect to intuitive intellect, we're moving from personal closer to lawfulness. So we're moving towards universal truth. And then as we get into the zone in the present moment of mindfulness, and we're releasing space and working on an activity, we convert that information into a type of wisdom. And then from there, as we move into the Akasha, the mind moves towards universal truth. So this is part of the journey from a personal truth that's stuck inside the physical doctrine, intellect, science, or whatever it might be, and moving up the vibrational scale to the levels of universal truth, which are only accessible through Akasha, because your mind synchronizes with universal laws that regulate our experience. So there's a different perception. There's a universal perception from that level rather than a personified perception. Okay, so I hope this helps with understanding the difference between knowledge, wisdom, insight, and these labels are incidental. They just happen to be there at the moment. You can put whatever titles you want on these different levels of learning, because it's only a journal from personal truth to universal, a journey from personal truth to universal, and it's a journey from releasing attachment to time, releasing attachment to space, and working into the Akasha to get different perspectives, different views of a particular teaching, of a particular idea, of a particular meditation object, whether it's a religion or a higher practice or a lower practice. It doesn't matter. It's just a view. But depending on the state of your consciousness is what view you're going to get. Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you for your time, and see you in the next video.